Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to my first video I'm filming as a 29-year-old. So yep, it was my birthday the other day. Thank you for the outpouring of love that I got on my my birthday book tag video and on my Instagram and all the wonderful packages I've been sent. They couldn't all fit in my mailbox, and I have to pick up the rest of them on Monday. So thank you for all the love. Thank you for sticking around with me in this crazy channel that I have built and just all the things that have happened. There are some amazing opportunities that I have been afforded because of you guys, and more that are coming up that I can't talk about yet. But I just got a really amazing birthday present that hasn't happened yet but will, and it's all because of you guys and the love that you show for the books that you like that I recommend. So first we have some channel members to welcome, and then we will dive in because I have 11 books to talk about, including a highly anticipated one and a couple surprises. So let's go ahead. We have 3 channel members. We have Ruth, who joined at the sassy supporter level. Thank you, Ruth. We have Madison, who is a new fated friend, so all the way to the top there. Thank you, Madison. And then we have Andrea, who joined at the romantic renegade level all this week. So thank you so much for showing your support for the channel. That means so much to me. All I can hope for is that my channel memberships can offset the price of books that I'm buying myself by the dozens. No, I'm just kidding. It really does mean a lot to me. Your support does. So let's go ahead. I'm gonna flip over to my book tracker here so we can start going through these because we had quite a week. So the first book we need to talk about, which I was almost done with last week, but I decided to slow down my read of it. And I'm glad that I did because I've had a lot of time to think about this book. And that is The Savage by Sophie Lark. So here it is. This is Kingmaker number 5, the book that happened because of fan outcry. This is the story of Sabrina Gallo, who is the daughter of Camille and Nero from Savage Lover, and Adric Petrov, who is the son of Dom and Lara, I think. Let me see. There are these handy dandy. Yes, Lara and Dominic. And they are a couple that if you've read Kingmakers, which I still stand by, that the Kingmaker, the four books, those are a very solid arc. That is the story that Sophie, meant to tell. And this is a kind of add-on to that. You can still get the full story if you're reading the first 4, but there are some really awesome things that go down in The Spy, and throughout the series we've seen Sabrina a little bit, but we see her a lot in this book because she interacts with wow, her name just went out of my head. Yep, Nyx. She interacts with Nyx quite a bit, who is the heroine of The Spy, and Adric, I don't want to say how he fits into The Spy because, that book is one of the best kept spoilers of Booktube and all those things, in my opinion, but he is important to it. And this is their adventures, and holy crap, you guys, this book is a ride, all right? It is a nonstop ride. Savage is a perfect way to describe it. Sabrina is this chaotic, fierce, powerful, take no shit 20-year-old who has been raised with pretty much every advantage. She has her father's chaos, and she's very smart, and she is a manipulator in a lot of ways, but she's also just so full of life, she's also a bisexual character, and when we meet her, she has actually not dated any men, really. She has had interactions with them. She doesn't hate men, but she has mostly been in relationships with women. And when Adric and Sabrina interact with each other in The Spy, there's a thing at the end of that book where Adric says that he will meet her on the dock the last day of Kingmakers, and he's going to take her on a date. And Sabrina is kind of like 50-50 if she actually wants to go on this date with him, but he shows up on this super hot motorcycle and he takes her on an amazing date. But she, at every turn, kind of usurps and messes with the plans that he had. And this date leads them to be even more like intrigued with each other, and through some discussion and back and forth over the summertime, Sabrina actually decides to go to Moscow with Adric because he is setting up his criminal empire that is going to be like, you know, designated from his fathers and his uncles. So yeah, that is the setup of this. This is about their pretty toxic and intense relationship where they are trying to build their empire, specifically through a new line of party drugs that they are trying to corner the market on. Drugs that make pleasure more intense, that make concerts more exciting, that just really kind of like amp up any kind of pleasure you can think of. They want there to be a drug that goes with it that can do it. And these are both alphas, okay? Their personalities are both very alpha, and Adric is promising that he loves Sabrina exactly as she is, and Sabrina is kind of always testing that in different ways, and for the most part, she is met like beat for beat with this craziness that they have. And so this book is, you know, Sophie will say this was the first for her in that she has them together pretty early on in this book. So, you know, as romance readers, like, we know we're looking at a breakup type situation before we're getting back together. So this is a, you know, lovers to enemies to lovers again, is how I would say it. Because I don't know if I would ever call them friends. I wouldn't call this like a friends to lovers. Like, I would really say they jump right headfirst into the lust bucket. And it is a lovers to enemies to lovers, to this like fight for dominance, to see if their partnership can work or if it's going to blow up in their face. And, you know, I would say that it definitely does quite a bit. So now you know, and if you want to read my review on Goodreads, definitely go check that out. I have some mixed feelings about this book, and that's hard for me. Y'all know Sophie is she's my queen. I've built my name on Sophie Lark. No, I'm just kidding. I haven't. I have my name as it is. But this book, I will say, was not completely for me, and there are two main reasons for that. And without getting too spoilery into that, I mean, you definitely can go look up deeper spoilers, but there's two main reasons. One of them is a trigger for me that I'm going to talk about, and the other one is just the way that this relationship was portrayed. I'm going to see if I can set this up, because this book is actually really heavy. We'll see if it stays up there. So the biggest thing for me is, you know, I mentioned drug use, or like that drugs were a part of this, and I am fully aware, and I've read plenty of them, that are mafia books where the empire is built on drugs. You know, that's a thing. Like, that is how a lot of mafias make their money. Cartels, capo, like, that's the game. But I've never read a book quite where the making of the drugs and testing of the drugs was quite so prevalent. And that was very difficult for me. I've shared before, when that has showed up in other books, that drug usage by the protagonist is very difficult for me, especially when it isn't like a problem in the relationship. Like, the drugs are never what is like causing problems in their relationship, like the consuming of it. Like, their decisions about how to progress their empire is obviously about drugs. But I had a very tough time with certain scenes in this book where they were testing drugs and then having sexual interactions. Very sexy interactions, but I don't enjoy reading about people when they're high. I do not. It makes my skin crawl, and it very much started to detach me from this couple. it just doesn't, it's not sexy to me, and I'm not shaming anyone who it is. I think that Sophie writes a steamy fucking book with this. Like, when you go to Goodreads and read the reviews raving about how hot this book is, it absolutely is. But because drug use is so triggering for me to see people enjoying it and testing it, and there's never any consequences, like, the consequences in this relationship, and like, you know, because there are problems. This isn't smooth sailing for them. It's never really about the fact that they are creating and testing substances on each other, that I just don't think that the chemistry would turn out that well every time. And like, I know this is a romance novel, and I know that there are romance rules, and I think part of it is that Sophie always does so much research for her stories, and I know that we weren't, you know, going full Breaking Bad with this, but it was just very hard for me to empathize with the characters. And particularly, there was a line in this book where Sabrina was just showing how, I know how badass she thinks she is, but how naive, because there was a line where when they're creating these substances, she's like, I don't want slaves, you know, I don't want these to be like addictive, because I don't want slaves who are forced to buy from us. I want willing participants, people who enjoy how they feel when they're taking it, and that they come back for more. And I was literally like, do you not understand that the addictive quality is how they feel when they're on it? And I mean, that could be like, you know, I haven't asked Sophie this, but that could be that Sabrina sees it that way, not, you know, that Sophie actually believes that. You know, I don't think that. And that's why, you know, again, I'm sorry to pull TikTok into our conversation here on Bookstagram, or on Booktube. I try not to do that. But, you know, there's a lot of people on Book Talk, there's this going around where people are blaming authors for, or like attacking authors because of content in books. And I don't believe in doing that. I'm very much able to separate things. And so, I mean, nothing about this book makes me upset with Sophie or never want to read one of her books again. In my review, I even say, like, drug use is a very personal trigger for me. I've lost loved ones to it. I don't care what kind it is. I don't care if it's the sexy kind that makes them want to bone all night, that makes Adric want to eat all the pussy all the time. Like, he definitely likes to go chow down, I will tell you that. And all that is hot. But as soon as the drugs were introduced to it and they were testing them together, every sex scene where drugs were involved, I skipped it. Because I was like, ugh, and I moved along. So that's the one part of it. And it was the biggest part because, as I said, it started to detach me from the characters because I don't find people sympathetic or empathetic who are doing drugs in the way that they were doing it in here. And the fact that they were creating drugs to sell to people to get them addicted to it and to fund their empire. Again, I know that's what the mafia is doing. Like, I want a perfect world in my mafia books. It's just when it's put in your face that, like, this is them, we're watching her make it and test it, is different than saying that, like, oh yeah, we sell drugs, we make our money off of cocaine. And it's just said in the book, you know what I mean? Because a lot of mafia books where the, like, capos and their men sell drugs, they forbid their men from doing them. And so I don't have to see drug use in my book. So, okay, I'm taking too long with this. I knew I was going to because I had a lot to say and explanation. So that bothered me. The second part was the toxicity level of this relationship was hard for me. And I understand the characters that Sophie built, that this may be the way that they would act, but they were very selfish characters the whole way through. They did not like to bend at all. Even when there's parts of the books where they're literally hurting this person that they love, because no one can hurt the person they love more than the other person, you know, and this escalates throughout the story. And by the time, you know, we are getting to the resolution, I didn't care whether they were together or not. And that is coupled with, I don't like the drug storyline and the fact that I never saw them compromise or discuss anything. It was always alpha against alpha, and we are going to pound the other person until they submit. And when they don't submit, it's the city that's going to burn around us, not us. That may sound fun and hot, and it was really sexy, and this book reads like a movie, and if you listen to the soundtrack while you do it, you're going to have an amazing time. But it wasn't the best book by Sophie that I've read, And I can only compare it to what I've read before. And Sophie's written some of my favorite books ever. So for me, I gave this book 4 stars. Because it was an arc, I did rate it a little higher than I might on a different day. But you guys know that I'm very transparent about that. I tend to rate arcs higher than I would if I read it on my own, just because a lot of the parts of this were personal preference. Sophie can still write her pants off, and she'll probably write your pants off too when you're listening to reading one of her books. And this was a 4.5 on the spice scale for me. This does have an FFM scene and an FF, like 2 kind of FF scenes in this book. So she does hold up to that. So yeah, and yeah, the trigger warnings for me were drug use and violence. And yeah. So anyway, let's move along. I knew I would have a lot to say, so we're going to keep going because I have some other amazing books to talk about. So, fantastic. The next book that I read, we'll put this downwards. The next book that I read was LifeBlood by Amara Rae. This was a book that I saw on TikTok, and we're actually going to have a couple of those, and I just loved how the person described it to me. So this book is a fated mate story. It's also like a captor-captive. It's a witch and a warlock. It's in this world where witches and warlocks hate each other. Our heroine, her name is Colette, and she is a healing witch. And she, in the beginning, her coven gets attacked by these warlocks, and she gets taken captive by a warlock named Mackie, who is her fated mate. And he realizes that they're fated mates, but because he believes all witches are liars and deceivers, and his job is to torture her to find out certain information, he's like, oh, well, being a fated mate will make that even easier. Not realizing that every time he hurts her, because there is torture, there is, like, actual, like, body modification as, like, torture, like, pain, he doesn't understand why it's hurting him too. And the more that he's told to torture her for information, the more he finds himself, the idea of hurting her to be abhorrent to him, and he doesn't understand why. He thinks she's manipulating him. There's a lot going on. So yeah, this book was epic. It was very sexy. It was very hot. It was a bit gory. As I said, there is some like torture of the body happening in this one. This is the first in a series, but each book will have an HEA for the couple. So Colette and Mackie do have an HEA in this book, and the other books in the series will be about her like coven sisters, I believe is what's supposed to happen. Like the next one I think is supposed to be like a fae prince and her, because there's vampires in this. We get to see a vampiress in this one. There's the warlocks, there's werewolves, there's all these different creatures in this world. So I gave this one 4 stars. The hero is mean for a very long time in this one, so just know that. I highly recommend that, like, if you like dark romance or you like mafia kidnapping romances, you may really enjoy this book. Like, I really loved this, and as far as I can tell, I believe this is this author's first book. And it's fantastic for a first book, like, honest to goodness. So I gave this 4 stars, and it's a 4 on the spice rating. The trigger warnings are there's torture, there's bloodletting, body modification, restraints, dubious consent, kind of non-consent, and yeah, the hero is mean for a very long time. But the heroine, she's so sweet. There is also like BDSM play happening in here too. Our hero is very dominant, and our heroine, she is naturally submissive. So some of her torture ends up being pretty pleasurable for her because she likes what's happening, as well as because it's her fated mate that's doing it to her, her body is responding even if she wouldn't normally like it. But I loved it. Next, this is just a quickie here. I read An Affair by the Sea by Erica Ridley. There's this like 4-book novella series that has Erica Ridley and Grace Burrows doing these, and so An Affair by the Sea came out recently already, but it is a fake relationship. There's a class difference between them. The hero wants to become a chef, and so he's staying by this seaside town, and he wants to open like a tea room there. And our heroine, her name is Allegra. She has told her family about that she has a suitor who was a sailor, and that she's never been able to find him or find him again. What am I talking about? I'm getting distracted by, there was a noise over there. Okay, so it kind of reminds me of like When a Scot Ties the Knot by Tessa Dare. So like she has made up this person she was in love with so that her loved ones wouldn't try to make her marry someone. And then she runs into this man and her family assumes that this is the captain that she was in love with. And because he doesn't want anyone to know who he really is, he's willing to go along with this ruse and pretend to be her love. And so for the summer, while she's staying there, he's like, I'll pretend to be your betrothed. And then at the end of the summer, we could break up our relationship. So it's like a 200-page novella. It was pretty cute. But I gave it 3.5 stars, and it's 1.5 on the spice scale. Then I read Dark Harmony by Thalassa. I finished up the Bargainer trilogy. I adored this book. I really, really did. I'm so happy. You know that I had put off reading Rhapsodic for a pretty long time. I don't know why. Well, I know why. It's because I'd read other Thalassa and they hadn't worked for me. And this one really did. So I don't want to spoil anything in this one, but this is a fated mate's relationship between a siren and the king of the night. So it's Calypso, who's half siren, and Desmond, who is the king of the night. And it's kind of a Hades and Persephone thing. Like, their relationship back in like Rhapsodic was he knew that they were fated mates. It also reminds people of A Court of Mist and Fury, because he keeps that they are a mate a secret until she is of age. And she makes these deals with him, and all of these deals are beads on a bracelet, and now she owes him all of these favors because he has granted her like wishes basically. And he had to keep himself away from her for a certain amount of years because of reasons, and that all happened back in the first book. So this is the third book. They are together now. She is in his world with him, and there's some trouble happening in the Fae realm. There is some baddies trying to cause them problems. I'm sorry I'm being vague. I love this, but I love the relationship between them. They communicate so well, and like he does keep secrets from her because of story reasons, but I really like how it all played out, and I just had a really enjoyable time. I listened to the audiobooks for these and I loved it. I gave this 4.5 stars, and this one was a 3.5 on the spice scale because there was a little bit of butt stuff happening. I said it. There was a little bit of butt stuff, and it was the fun things. There we go. Next, I read, oh my goodness, this book was bonkers. I read a book called Corrupt Educator by Bianca Cole. I'd seen this one on a list of student-teacher, and it's also a mafia romance, because this is a mafia school. I know. I have a type. And our hero actually was a businessman, and he refused to pay the mafia dues, protection. And so they burned down his building, and it caused one of his employees who he liked, like they had a flirtation going, it caused her death. And so he has ties to the mafia, which I won't spoil them, and he wants to get revenge against the people who did this. So he literally buys out a mafia school that exists, becomes the principal of said school, and bides his time until the child of his enemies is finally at his school, okay? He actually sets her up so that her parents force her to go to this mafia school. And her name is Ava, and his name is Oakley. And so it's very interesting because, like, she's 18, she's at this mafia school, she does not want to be there. He wants to use her to get revenge on her parents, but her parents don't care about her. Like, the first day that she's there, she gets attacked by some of the other girl students. They freaking shank her, and her parents are like, don't call us again unless she's dead. We want her to toughen up. And Oakley is just like, okay, I want to use this woman for revenge, but like, what the fuck is up with her parents? Like, if her parents don't care about her, how am I going to get revenge? But there ends up being an illicit relationship between them. This book is crazy, you guys. Like, there was like the first, like, sexy scene, she's had to stay behind in class, and he's literally so obsessed with how beautiful she is that he's sitting at his desk while she's writing a paper, and he literally jacks off under his desk to watching her write her paper. There's lots of sex in closets, and on his desk there was just lots of sexy things. There was some crazy dynamics in this. Like, yeah, it was intense. So I gave this one 3.5 stars because it had, like, some of the writing was not super great. The dialogue was pretty awkward, and I don't know, like, if this author, if, like, English isn't their first language, and I don't mean that in, like, a derogatory way. I just mean a lot of sentence structure was not, it didn't make sense to me, some of it. But I still had a great time, and, like, I laughed out loud at some of the ridiculousness in it, and that gets points in my book. So I gave 3.5 stars, and it was a 4 on the spice scale, maybe even a little higher than that, because, yeah, there was definitely butt stuff in this one, and butt plugs and things. It was an adventure. So if you like student-teacher age gap, I highly recommend that one. Oh, and that's what I was going to say. Also, because it's a mafia school, it's not like there's, like, a board of educators, or that, like, he could be turned in for sleeping with someone's daughter. But, I mean, you know, the mafia could decide to murder him for it, but whatever. So then I finished The Demon Tide by Laurie Forrest. I'd been picking away at this one. I was doing this as a buddy read with my friend Sam from Sam Reads a Little. I don't actually know, though, if she's finished it yet, because we were reading together for a good portion of it, but then she had to do something else, and I was like, I need to finish this because there's so many characters. I'm not even going to do a full setup for this one. This is book 4 in a YA fantasy series that I've been reading for a long time. The Black Witch is the first book. I love this series, and it's one of the few YA series that I am continuing to read, even though I do not read much YA these days. I can't stop with this one. Like, I love this series. There's so many characters. There's so much of a setup. There are all the different magical creatures. There's an evil group of powerful people who want to destroy all the other races, and our heroine is Ellerin Grey, and she's trying to fight against that. That is the basic setup. You know, we have a chosen one, but the thing is like, she's a chosen one to be bad, and she's trying to use that to be good. This one, I definitely cried a couple times, and it was amazing. So I gave The Demon Tide 4.5 stars, and it only has a 1 on the spice scale, because, like, there's not a lot of sexy time happening. Which is why I don't read much YA anymore, because I don't get what my horny heart wants. Okay, so next I read a couple more novellas from that collection of novellas that were released by a couple of authors. They released a bunch of novellas for free. So I read The Guardian and the Escort by Fiona Cole. This is about a guy who was a guardian of his friend's daughter. She's 22. She's graduated college, and she's ready to take over her family business now. And yeah, and the hero is very attracted to her, but she, you know, but he wants to deny it because it'll make him feel gross. And she keeps, like, teasing him and baiting him, and then he finally gives in, and they have this CNC encounter where, like, she's been baiting him the whole time, and she really wants him to fuck her, but then she, like, pretends that she doesn't want it to happen, and it was really good. So Rose and Philip are the characters in that one. I gave this one 4 stars, and it has a 3 on the spice rating, and the only real trigger warning is the CNC. So then I read Good Little Girl by Jade West. This was another one of the freebies. This one had, like, BDSM and, like, daddy kink in it, because this is a step parent and stepdaughter. And he is currently married to her mom. There is an extenuating circumstance, like, it's a marriage of convenience, and he's actually younger than her mother, but, like, 10, 12 years older than her. So, yeah, this one was extremely spicy and kinky, but not that great. Like, I've read much better by Jade West, so I was a little disappointed. So I gave it 3 stars, and it was a 4 on the spice scale, and daddy kink is the main trigger. Then I read The Immortal by Gina Showalter. This is the second book in the Rise of the Warlords. This one is about Halo, who it is his turn to do his tasks. I read The Warlord at like in the beginning of the year, I think, and this book was like just coming out. This one just came out like a couple weeks ago, which is why I have a hardcover, because I'm an impatient person. And I listened to the audiobook for this. And then our heroine, she is half harpy, half nymph, and she ends up being his fated mate. And yeah, it's super sexy. This one has like a Groundhog Day situation happening where he has to do the 12 labors of Hercules all on like the same day, but that's what the loop is for. And so he needs to be able to complete the 12 tasks of Hercules, and his fated mate is like gets involved in this accidentally in a situation. That's a horrible explanation, but like if you didn't read the first one, it's a lot to explain the second one. Like you need to read these in order. But I gave this one 4 stars, and it is a 3 on the spice scale. That's like a paranormal, if that wasn't clear. Come on. Books, you guys. Books bug me. Okay, next. Oh my gosh. This one I have a big gush to go on. I'm in love. So I read Between Wrath and Mercy by Jess Wisecup. This is another debut author. This is another fantasy novel. This is another one that I found through TikTok. TikTok was being good to me this week, okay? Because this book was so close to being a 6-star. I'll tell you why it's not, but like, it's so close. And you know what? It might even be if I sat with it some more, because this book had so many things that I love. So this is a second chance romance between a woman who, she had a twin sister, and her twin sister was engaged to the man that she loved when they were like teenagers. Her sister was what is called the beloved, which means she is like destined for great power. And in their world, when you marry, or it's called, I can't remember what the ceremony is called, but it's like more than a marriage. You do a ceremony that is mind, body, and soul, and you end up sharing your powers. So the prince of the land, he has like telekinetic powers, as well as he can like rift, so he can like teleport small distances. He has all these powers. And the heroine sister, Lucia, she was going to be she is the beloved, and so she was the one who was meant to marry the prince. And then when they merged, they were going to be like the most powerful king and queen they had seen in however long. So the thing is that Lucia, however we say it, I want to say Lucia because I read a lot of Italian mafia, but it's probably Lucia. She was betrothed to the prince. But you see, Emmeline, who we go by Emma, who is our main character and the POV character of this book, she was in love with the prince and he was in love with her. And Lucia was actually in love with someone else too. So it was this whole big mess. There was something that happened when they were older teens. Like, I don't know, I think they were like 16, 17. I might have missed the exact age. And Lucia ends up dying. And so that ends up breaking up any chance that like Rain, the prince, and Emma, our main character, have of being together. And Emma's father is going to force her to marry. And since Rain is kind of shook by everything that's happened, his betrothed died, and Emma is forced to marry someone else. And so she does, and she never sees Rain again. He shakes out of his stupor a couple months later and tries to come and visit her. And I mean, she's already married off to this other man. Faxon is his name, and she won't see him. So 15 plus years pass, and Emma and Faxon, they're kind of just existing together. Like, she does not sleep with him. They might sleep in the same bed, but she does not have sex with her husband. She sees him as kind of a friend or an acquaintance, and they raise their daughter together. And in the beginning of this novel, she's going on a trip with her father. They're going to do this father-daughter like bonding trip, And she really doesn't want to do that because there's a secret. Her daughter is supposedly the next beloved. So, you know, her sister was one, and now her daughter is one. And she's very worried about that because she doesn't want her daughter to have the same fate that her sister did. And so she does something bad. She keeps this a secret because if she suspects her daughter is a beloved, she's supposed to present her to one of their wise people so they can like test her. And she doesn't do that. She keeps it a secret until her daughter's older. Like, she's planning to tell her daughter when she's older because she saw what it did to her sister as a child to have this heavy knowledge, you know? So anyway, so the Faxon and her daughter, they go on this father-daughter trip, and soon after, it is discovered that her daughter has been kidnapped. Both her and Faxon have been kidnapped. So someone found out that her daughter was the beloved, and they kidnapped them. And so Emma can only think of one person to go to, and that is her lost love, Rain, the crown prince. She goes to see him and throws herself on his mercy and asks him to help her get her daughter back. And Rain, who has loved her all this time, drops everything that he's doing to help her find her daughter. And so that is the setup of this book. This book is long, y'all. It is very long. It is over 500 pages. It is also the first in a series. However, here's my pitch for why you should read this now. I know a lot of you won't want to hear that. You'll want to wait till another book comes out in the series, but there's two reasons why. Number one, this is the debut book for an author, and she did so fucking good. This book is, you know, it's a second chance romance. It portrays a mature romance. It is a woman who's had a baby. She's insecure about parts of her body. It has a hero who has been devoted to her all these years. That is going to come out through the story, like how he's been devoted and these little things that he's done, you know, with no hope of ever having her back again. These little ways that he has honored their love that was lost when they were young and stupid and afraid. And he loves this woman. Like, he loves every part of her. There is sex scenes in this book where I fucking cried. It is a very slow burn too, but because this is a big book, like, there's a very slow burn before they're exploring anything between them. And I know that I did say that her husband is in this, but spoiler alert, this book didn't have cheating, in my opinion. So take that for what you will. I don't want to spoil what happens, but I did say she has a husband. And this book also doesn't have cheating, in my opinion. So I'll just put that out there. This hero is fantastic. This woman, though there were parts of it in the beginning where I wanted to smack her head against something because I'm like, this man is so perfect. She feels betrayed by the fact that he wouldn't marry her all those years ago, and she was forced to marry someone else. There's so many things that come out. There's so many secrets. There is magic. There is, like, a really bad dude who we're trying to defeat in point. But what I meant to say, why I think you should read this now. There is very significant breakthroughs through this story, and the couple is firmly together at the end of this book. There was very satisfying revelations. There was deep connections made, and so there is a cliffhanger at the end of this book, but in my opinion, it is a plot cliffhanger. It's not a romance cliffhanger. Does that make sense without spoiling it? Like, this couple is firmly together at the end of this book. There is just plot things that are carrying us into the next one. And the author, who I had tagged her in my review because I really wanted to support her. She doesn't have a ton of reviews on Goodreads. Please go read this book. It's on Kindle Unlimited. I have ordered a physical copy of it. I'm sure it's going to be this freaking thick, but it is so good. I need you guys to read it so she is encouraged, okay? And because I tagged her in my review where I was like, this was so beautiful. I loved it. And she was like, you know, I was having a really rough author day today, and that just means so much to me that you love my book. And I was like, girl, I need you to get the next one out soon. So it's supposed to come later this summer, which I know seems far away, but it's not that far away. And like, I'm telling you, if you love fantasy, if you love second chance romance, if you love mature relationships, because they're both in their 30s, which I know isn't like old by any means. I'm not saying that, but like it is a more mature love. This isn't the hot blush of youth. This is like a deep connection. It is so beautiful and moving to me. It like, oh, I took my time reading this book too. It took me 3 days to read it. And I'm so glad that it did because I loved it. And I really want to encourage you to read it if you love fantasy romance. I'm sad that I filmed a fantasy romance rec video before I had read this because it is way up there for me. That's why I said, like, I gave this 5 stars. It's a 3.5 on the spice scale. But, like, I feel like it might be more. I don't know. I got to sit with it a little bit. Because there were some parts that are a little, like, drawn out. And there are some parts of the plot that I feel like the time it took to get to them, I didn't completely understand the timeline of this story, let's say that. But that was so minute compared to all the beautiful moments. I just didn't care. Okay. The last book I want to talk about is The Duke and the Lady in Red. I am continuing my read through all of Lorraine Heath's backlog, and I hadn't read this one yet. This book is book 3 in, I think, The Scandalous Gentleman of St. James. Not sure. But this one is about Whit Avondale, the Duke of Avondale, who is the son. It is the Scandalous Gentleman of St. James Place. So this one says it's the finale of the series, but I'm pretty sure that the heiress one is also in this series, but maybe she added it later. I don't know. But this one is about Rose, who is going to swindle him. And he ends up catching her and forcing her into a like sex deal with him. But she kind of wants to be in the sex deal, so there's that. She needs money because she has a brother who has a disease, and Lorraine Heath says what this disease is in the back. It is based off of the Elephant Man, so I'll say that. And the disease that it was believed to be was neurofibromatosis. Although, seeing her author's note, she says, although there are some who question the diagnosis today. So yes, Harry, our heroine's brother, is like based off of the Elephant Man. And this book, I finished this book on my way home from Pillager today, and I was crying like the whole way. This book was so beautiful, but it is very painful because the trigger warning is also a spoiler. So skip ahead a little bit if you don't want it. But death of a sibling is the trigger, so obviously you can assume what happens with her brother. But so much of this book is about Avondale. He's annoyed that he loves her so much, but also as his obsession with her grows, he wants to give her all these things she hasn't been able to have. And like, she's had so much responsibility to make sure her brother is taken care of and treated with respect, and he just wants to give them everything that he can, and he doesn't realize quite what that means, you know, that's love, you know. So I love this book. I gave it 5 stars. It's 2.5 on the spice scale. Besides that one trigger that I mentioned, there's also parental abuse that's mentioned because they were quite mistreated by their father, who really put Harry on display and led to Rose running away with him and trying to make a better life for him through her swindles that she does. So this was absolutely beautiful. It is tough to read, so know that, but I understand now why so many of my friends really loved this one. So there you go, everybody. Those were the books that I read for week number 11 of 2022. Thank you so much for watching this. Thank you so much to my new channel members for supporting me. If you want to check out any of that, you can find the links down below, and I will see you next time. Bye!